Hello and welcome to Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today it's my pleasure to have Andre Norman with us. Andre's challenging childhood led him to be sentenced to over 100 years in prison. While in solitary confinement, Andre had an epiphany and decided to turn his life around. After serving 14 years in prison, he is now known to many as the Ambassador of Hope, which also happens to be the title of his book. Andre travels the world to serve as a mentor for many in need, including those in prisons. Andre, it's so great to have you on the show.
It's great to be here with you, man. It's my honor to be hanging out with you.
Thank you, and I appreciate you as well. I appreciate you as a friend, getting to know you through the Genius Network that we're both affiliated with. So glad we put this podcast episode together finally after several false starts. I'd love to start by getting a bit more detail around your childhood, because that started you down a track that was not good and led to a lot of pain and suffering for a number of people, you included, of course. And so, if we could kind of unpack what happened and how you see that childhood now in retrospect, because you can only connect the dots looking backward.
Well, I was born in Boston, Massachusetts. My mom married a high school sweetheart and she had two kids. And then her husband went to prison for robbing banks and she met my dad, a local hustler, and she had four more kids. So life was great, six kids, mom, dad, everything's fine, except for my dad had a habit of beating my mom. So we go through these years of domestic violence. That's the new name for it. In the 70s, it was called handling your household. But we go through the years of domestic violence and nobody's really coming to save mom. And it just wears on you. Then once we got old enough to leave the house, aka go to school, it was phenomenal. We got to go to this building. There's a building full of kids. We could just play all day. Then we run into a thing called the busing crisis. In the late 70s, forced busing, where black kids were sent to white schools and vice versa, the city revolted. And they would stand on the corner and throw rocks at the buses and call us names. So the first would be nigger, and then a bunch of other names were called behind it. Then I went home to my dad. I was like, who are these people? So I never really met white people before. So why are they throwing rocks at me? Nobody's really thrown rocks at me before. I said, what do these names mean? I don't understand. I've never heard them before. And my dad looked at me and I looked at him, then he walked away. He didn't know how to deal with the circumstance of what was happening to his kids. And I always say to people, if you were my dad and I came home to you, or your kid came home to you tomorrow and said, hey, mom, hey, dad, why are these people throwing rocks at me? And what do these names mean? What would you have said? What would have been your response to a 7-year-old son looking for guidance on going through the busing crisis and all that went with it?
Yeah, I would say that not everybody is of the light. They're not, and but yet everybody has some light in them. So you have to try and see that light in everybody, even somebody who seems like a total sociopath. But yet you have to maintain your boundaries. When somebody is hateful or unkind, you have to maintain your boundaries and don't let people walk all over you. I mean, it's not like you can get off the bus and confront these people throwing rocks. You're on the bus, but you can at least know that it's not personal. It feels very personal, but it's not personal. They're putting a label on you and many others without cause, without justification. It's not fair. So that's the way I might explain it, but in 7-year-old terms.
My dad didn't explain it, so I was up to process it by myself. And for one day the rock started, and one day the rock stopped. I guess they figured it out. And for my mother, one day the beating started, and one day the beating stopped. I came home from school and they said, Dad's gone. She got tired of the beatings and she put him out. So now I have a single mom, 6 kids living in the city. We bounce around and we go to a new school, a new neighborhood, and they find out I can't read or write. So he put me in a thing called the dummy class. Where all the kids who couldn't read and write, they put us at the end of the hall and just closed the door. And that was going to be my lot in life. I was just going to grow up illiterate and dumb, and that I'd have found my way the best way I could. Luckily for me, in the 3rd grade, the teacher pulled me out of the dummy class, and she said, I'm not a dummy, I just learned differently. She took the time to teach me my learning style. And she showed me that I could read, write, and count. I just had to learn it and ingest it a different way. And she taught me how I learned. and how I understood things and how I processed things, which nobody had ever done before. And for that reason, I came out of the dummy class and went back into regular schools and regular classrooms, and we just pushed forward. There were three lessons I learned as a young kid. One, it's okay to hit people, because if my mother can be hit, anybody can be hit. Two, I better protect myself, because when those kids threw rocks and names at me, nobody came to help me. And three, I can walk out on anything. I can quit anytime. My dad quit on me, so why can't I quit on something else? So as an 8-year-old kid, those were my lenses that I saw the world. And so as I went forward, third grade, fourth grade, and just being a poor kid, you don't know you're poor till you get around kids who have stuff, which was, for me, was middle school. And the kids started making fun of me for wearing old clothes, dirty clothes, and not having. And they just gave me a super hard time. And as a result, I was just like stressed out, didn't want to go to school. My mom made me go. Then I started selling marijuana after school just to make a couple of dollars. And that $30, $40 a day gave me enough money to buy clean clothes and pay for my own lunch and not be a little welfare kid. And then also in the sixth grade, a teacher, Miss Ellis, she gave me a trumpet and she put me in a band. And I played that trumpet all through middle school. And when it came time to go to high school, she pulled me to the side. She said, I'm sending you to a magnet school so you can play the trumpet. I said, no, I want to go to the district high school with all my friends. She said, you go where your gift goes, not where your friends go. And she made me go to the magnet school. And when I got there, I joined the band. It was all good. And I was a frontline trumpet player until my cool guy friends told me playing the trumpet was stupid. And black folks don't play the trumpet. You can't go anywhere doing that. You need to hang out with us. It's either get rid of the trumpet or get rid of us. So at 14, I've been on my own almost my whole life. My friends were making me choose, so I chose my friend over my trumpet. Hmm. And when I gave up my trumpet, I gave up my passion, my purpose, my direction, my savior. And I just had no purpose anymore. And I just drifted until I ended up in prison.
What did you end up in prison for?
Started out selling weed in the park. Then I started carrying guns to the park. Then I started robbing people who sold weed in the park. And I started robbing people who sold drugs. That was my main thing. Because as a young age, I saw from the sixth grade, all these kids made money selling drugs in the park. And they had a lot of cash and they weren't that tough. I said, I can just take their money. So that became my hustle, as they call it. I would rob drug dealers.
Wow. And you got caught, apparently. So how did that happen?
You keep doing it enough times, you're going to get caught. Nothing lasts forever. And I wasn't the best robber. I just did what I thought was the best way to do it. And then I eventually get caught. I get sent to prison. You get caught, you make bail. You get caught, you make bail. You get caught, you make bail. And one time they don't give you bail, and everything catches up. And I'm 18 years old, sitting in Superior Court, and the judge started reading off sentences. He said, Andre Norman, for the crime of armed robbery, 7 to 10 years. For the crime of armed assault with a shotgun, 9 to 10 years. Armed assault with a shotgun, 9 to 10 years. Armed robbery, 10 years. Armed assault, 10 years. Armed assault in a dwelling, 15 years. Armed carjacking, 15 years. I had a gun charge, they gave me 5. And they put me in a van, they took me to the penitentiary, and they dropped me off.
Did you have a lousy lawyer?
No, he was actually a good lawyer, just lousy for me. See, that's the thing. I don't want to say he was a bad lawyer. He intentionally didn't represent me. I eventually came home because the case that he sold me out on, that's what public defenders generally do, for whatever their reason. He determined that I was guilty and I should be sent to jail. Because while I was in the county jail, I went to him at 2 pieces of paper because I was charged with armed robbery and I was charged with larceny. I said, look, lawyer, these 2 pieces of paper from different courthouses, but it says I stole the same thing. In this court, it says it's larceny. I stole this item. In this court, it says armed robbery. I stole the same item. The items listed both places. I know nothing about the law. I'm 18, high school dropout, but I knew enough to say, is this double jeopardy? He looked me in my face and said no. I subsequently pled guilty to larceny first. I went to trial on the armed robbery and I was found guilty. And then since I was on bail and I was scared to go to prison, I ran. And while I was on the run, I picked up 5 more cases. I eventually came back, and that's where I got all the time from. Long story short, when I filed my appeal, the judge said on the appellate court, it was double jeopardy, and I had an ineffective lawyer, and they reversed my case. Had I pled guilty like I did in the district court, and I think I got probation. Day one of trial, my lawyer should have filed a motion to have my charges dismissed based on double jeopardy. We would have won the appeal, and I'd have never stepped 1 foot for 1 day in state prison. But my lawyer determined that he decided I should go to prison. Not the district attorney, not the jury, not the judge. My lawyer decided that I should go to prison, and he sent me. And when I came home from prison, I started working with the governor and the president and the attorney general. He saw me on TV. He looked me up and he called me. And he said, "Hey, Andre, I just want to apologize for what I did to you." I was like, "Man, listen, I'm not tripping." He said, can we go to lunch? I said, "I might trip on that one." I said, "I'm not ready to go to lunch with you. No, I might be today, but then I wouldn't have been a good lunch." Because
Yeah.
he knew what he did, because that's why he had become a Christian, changed his life around. And he wanted to make amends. So he called to tell me that he'd done me wrong intentionally, and he wanted to apologize, and when I forgive him. And I said, "Yeah. I mean, you sent me to prison for 14 years. Damn, they got me killed 100 times, but I forgive you, because it does me no good staying angry at you. What you did, you did."
It's hard to
So,
see
but
it at the time, but like everything is divinely set up for us. If you had gotten off of those charges and not gone to prison, don't you think you would have ended up in even worse place?
hands down, far worse off. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I agree going to prison was good for me, but at the same time, it wasn't his call. That wasn't his job. So yeah, I mean, going to prison probably saved my life. So him being a bad lawyer saved my life. So I mean, I accept the outcome, but it doesn't justify his actions.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't working, and from his standpoint, in tandem with God to help me become a better person. He sent me to prison because he wanted me to go. And I just think he shouldn't be a defense attorney. He should have been a prosecutor. Then it made sense. But I mean, I'm not mad at him. I'm not mad at him. Being mad at people takes too much energy, time, and focus. Where I can take that same time, focus, and energy and help somebody. It was a lesson. It's a lesson that I share. And that lesson and that life experience is now help for somebody else to think, know something, I have a chance. Somebody went through worse. I shouldn't have spent a day in prison, let alone 14 years and 2.5 years in solitary confinement. I made it through, and I'm doing well. So it's not where you start, it's where you end.
You certainly have the life experience, the credibility for somebody who's done bad stuff in prison to listen to you. Like, okay, so here's somebody who knows the school hard knocks like I do. So maybe I'll listen to this guy.
We were in prison today, or county jail, for 4 months straight. There were at least one stabbing a day for 4 months straight in this place. Then the sheriff called me and said, "Andre, we need you to come in and help us with this violence." So I've been in prison for 2 months now, 2.5 months, talking to gang leaders, talking to victims, talking to the staff. And today we had like our biggest meeting where the chief of the jail and the leadership met with the gang leaders in the leadership. And we came up with an understanding of how we were going to stop people from being stabbed in the jail. I wouldn't have been able to do that without the insights and experiences that I went through in my own life. So it's paying off, even though I don't recommend this path for many people.
So when you say you were just in prison, you were just in jail, that's to visit. So you're invited by the police department, the sheriffs, or whatever.
I don't go without a visitor's pass.
What sort of work do you do there? Give presentations? You work one-on-one, mentoring
Mainly
inmates?
mentoring inmates and mentoring staff, because the prison staff and the prison inmates they just see themselves as enemies just because. And because I see you as my enemy, I can't hear good from you. I can't hear positive from you. I can't hear warning from you. I can't hear from you. And it's the same thing the other way. The guards can't really hear the prisoners, and the prisoners can't hear the guards. So they're both in there being deaf, and they're arguing out loud. And people are getting hurt on both sides. So when I come in, both sides can hear me. So I become the mediator and the translator between the guards and the prisoners, with the goal being decreasing violence inside the facility, and then extending that to the community, decreasing violence into the community.
Are you working with a nonprofit like DeFi to help these prisoners, or are you just doing it on your own?
Academy of Hope is a nonprofit.
Okay.
I work with Academy of Hope, which is nonprofit. It specializes in gangs and prison violence. And then we partner with a company out of Texas called Aventi/Securus, which provides these things. That's why this allows me. This is a prison tablet. Prisoners, there's 650,000 of these in prisons, so in jails. So as fast as I can run, this goes faster. So I can talk to 650,000 people on here versus I talk to maybe 50 people today. So I can mentor at scale, collaborating with the Securus tablet. Then I can be in Indiana tomorrow. I can be in Washington State. I can be in California, Texas. I can be in Michigan and New York all at one time.
How would somebody who's listening, who's, let's say, has some online course on entrepreneurship or internet marketing or something, get their course onto that tablet for thousands of inmates across the country to learn valuable skills if they want to donate that online course to these inmates?
If anybody listening or somebody they know of who's listening wants to donate a book, a course, music, meditation, anything that can be audio, video, or even digital like paper. Digital like digital books. They can just send me an email and say, "Hey, Andre, I want to donate this book. I wrote a book. I want to donate my book." Now, when I say donate your book, it's only going to be shown on this, meaning the only way the person that can see your book, course, or music, they have to be in prison and they have to have one of these. So if somebody jumps over the wall and they have this in their pocket, it doesn't work outside of the prison because the server is inside the building. So if they would just send me an email and say, "Hey, Andre, I want to donate this song, this book, this course, this podcast, or this movie, or this play, whatever the thing is," and then I just send them like a basic contract saying that, "Hey, your stuff is going to be given for free to prisoners that have complete access as long as you want to allow it. And if you decide a year from now, I don't want them to have access, you send me an email, Andre, I don't want access anymore," and I take it down.
Well, I hope somebody listening will take advantage of this opportunity to spread some light in the world.
Yeah.
And let's talk for a minute about your experience being in solitary confinement. 2.5 years seems like an inordinate amount of time to be put into solitary. What happened? And what happened to get you there? And what happened in there that was a gift in disguise?
Well, what happened to get me there was gang fights. I would fight and attack other prisoners, and inside of prison is punishment. It's not like it's legal to attack people in prison. It's not legal. And if I stab you at the bus stop, it's a crime. If I stab you in the prison, it's a crime. If I punch you in the face in the supermarket, it's a crime. If I punch you in the face in the prison cafeteria, it's a crime. It is not okay or legal to beat up people or harm people in prison. So when I would fight with people and attack people, it's still a crime. So I attacked some people one day, and my punishment inside the institution, it's like a mini courthouse where they take you to court inside a prison. They said, "Okay, for attacking these people, we're going to put you in solitary confinement, a cell by yourself. It can go anywhere from 1 to 10 years. They gave me 2.5. So I went, they put you in a cell in the basement, no sunlight, no air, just sit in a cell, dark room for 2.5 years. That's your institutional punishment for violating institutional rules. So when they put me in there, it's 24 hours a day. You're locked in a cell. You get to go outside 5 days a week for 1 hour. But I personally hate the cold, and I'm from Boston. So when it would snow, it turned into 24 hours for me. From like late September, October until spring, I was 24 hours in my cell because I'm not going outside and standing in 5 feet of snow, freezing, with bad clothing on. So while you're in there, initially, you really don't understand the depravity. And we as humans, forget about punishment, forget about criminality, forget about what's just. As humans, we're not designed to sit in a tomb for 2.5 years. It goes against the mental makeup. I go back to the Garden of Eden where Adam and Eve were both naked, walking in the grass, barefoot, sleeping on the ground, naked, which is where God designed us to be feet to earth, body to earth. So to put a man in a cement tomb is a whole other story. And justified or not, I'm not talking about the justification of it. We're talking about the humanity part, the nature part. By nature, we're not designed to be in a concrete box without sunlight for 2.5 years. It does something to your spirit, to your body, and to your mind. And around me, I'm watching what I call strong, tough guys who've been down here maybe a year ahead of me or 8 months before me snap. They're rubbing feces on themselves. They're setting themselves on fire. They're hanging themselves. I mean, they're just screaming at the middle of the night, screaming at the moon, as we would say. And it was like this timeline, 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, a year, people just snap and they would lose it. They're looking at a blank wall all day, every day, and their mind would give in. So I got nervous, like, am I going to be next? Because when I first moved on my unit, there was 15 cells on my tier and nobody took medicine. By month 6, half the tier's taking medicine from the nurse. And I'm not talking about cold pills. They're taking meds, like psych meds. And some of the tiers now getting mental health visits because they're smudging feces on themselves and they're doing stuff, they're harming themselves. I'm like, this is a tough guy. This is like a prison tough guy. Now he's down here banging his head against the wall because he can't cope with being locked in his tomb. So what I did to combat that is I ended up with a newspaper. And I had read the newspaper front to back 10 times. Then I started solving the problems in the newspaper as a way to keep my mind active. So I didn't look at the wall, I read the paper. Ukraine and Russia at war. Okay, if I'm the president of Ukraine, what would I do? If I'm the president of Russia, what would I do? If I'm the UN, what would I do? If I'm the president of the United States, what would I do? If I'm the person who lived in Ukraine, what would I do? If I'm the person who lived in Russia, what would I do? If I'm one of the bordering states or countries, what would I do? And I'd solve that problem from 10 vantage points. I go to the next page. Homelessness is impacting this part of the city. Well, if I was the mayor, what would I do? If I was a homeless shelter, what would I do? If I was a local business, if I was a local patron, there's probably like 500 problems in the paper. And I would sit there and solve the problem from every different vantage point I could. And that's what I did. I might get a newspaper once a month. And I'd hold that paper until I could solve every problem. And it just kept my mind moving because otherwise that gray wall starts shifting and talking to you. And I just kept solving the problems in the paper. And once I had a great solution, there was a guy next door to me named Junior Chung. I go to the wall, hey, Junior. During child time, they would open the doors so I could like talk through the bars. Hey, Junior. And I would tell him the problem and the solution. Now, Junior was on heavy medication. He had heavy meds. He had psych issues. But when Junior could understand my problem and solution and have a conversation about it, I knew I had a winner. There's a lot of super smart people, but Junior was legitimately crazy. And when he could understand it, I knew anybody could. So that's how I would test my theories. I would go to Junior. He didn't get it. I go back to the drawing board. And I come up with another solution. If he didn't get it, I go back to the drawing board. But once Junior could understand the solution to the problem, I had a winner. And I did that for almost 2 years. I just solved problems and ran them by Junior. And when I came out of solitary, towards the end of my solitary time, I realized that I had problems. And God spoke to me because I had went out to the rec yard one day and I was going to attack some prisoners again. 2.5 years in solitary and I hadn't changed my actions. Me and Joe say this. Denied access is not treatment. You locked me in a cell by myself for 2.5 years didn't make me better. It just didn't give me access to attack people. So when I had the access to attack people, that's what I was going to do. And before I could attack them, God told me, don't do this life choice. And me and God argued. I said, God, there's never been a God in my life. Why are you talking to me? And God said, Andre, life choice, don't do this. I said, my mother got beat and they threw rocks at me, when they called me names, when they ran, you never showed up. And I told him all the times he didn't show up. And he just stayed to the life choice, Andre. Make up your mind. Who are you going to serve? What you going to do? This is the last time. I can't save you after this. So in the end, I didn't attack anybody that day. I went back to my cell and I sat down. I said, well, if I can't be a psychopath and attack people, what's the point of being in prison? It didn't make sense anymore. So I said, I don't want to be in prison. I want to be free. I'm 6.5 years into my sentence, and the first time I ever uttered the thought, I want to be free. So then I looked around, white, black, Spanish, church guys, Muslims, kitchen workers, ball players, chess players. Everybody got free. Everybody came back. I said, free doesn't work. I don't want free. I said, I want to be successful because successful people don't come here. I came up with a plan to go home and go to Harvard University and become successful. And I made the dumbest mistake ever. I told my friends. My friends were like, you can't be that. I said, why not? They said, you're black. You're a gang member. You're violent. You can't read. Your family's poor. And they told me all the reasons I couldn't. And I didn't even really hear them talking to me. What I heard, in truth, were my friends in the 9th grade stealing my trumpet. It was the same conversation just 15 years later. And I said, no. I let them go, and I went back, and I designed my own plan. I said, I'm going to believe in me even if they don't. And I designed a plan to go from maximum security segregation to Harvard University.
So let's talk a bit more about talking to God. So there was a moment where you could have potentially killed somebody in prison, right? And God told you, don't cross this line. Have you tried to foster that personal relationship with God further to get more guidance than just, don't cross this line? Or did you only hear his voice that one time?
I heard his voice that one time, and I listened. Then I changed my direction as far as what I wanted to be in my life, my purpose. My purpose was to be the top gang leader in the prison system. Now, my new purpose was to go home and be successful and go to Harvard University. So as I'm walking this path, going towards Harvard, I start doing things differently. I'm going to school. I'm being kind. I'm reading. I'm being thoughtful. I'm being helpful. I'm not attacking people. Because I used to be in the unit. If you came to me and said, hey, Dre, I got beef with these guys, I'm like, let's tear the dorm up. Now, because I need to go to school tomorrow, we can't tear the dorm up. Because if we tear the dorm up, we're going to be locked down for a week. If we're locked down for a week, I can't go to school. No tearing the dorm up. So it's kind of selfish, but it was helpful to a lot of people, my being selfish. So what started off as me being selfish turned into me understanding that I'm really helping people. That my selfishness of wanting to go to school, not people being attacked, people actually were doing better. Then I started seeing it and realizing, whoa, I did that. I helped that person. I have a voice. And I found my voice in helping people. I found my voice in hurting people. I know there was a voice going the other way too. And I realized I had a voice in being able to help people. And I stayed on that track. It was June 12th, 1999. I had gone to a Christian service with a Catholic church at the prison. And I decided to go to confession. I went to confession. We were in there for about an hour and a half. It was my first time ever. It was easy hour and a half. At the end, the priest, Father Martin from St. Basil's in Methuen, he did the sinner's prayer, and I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior. And it was like phenomenal. It was 3 months after I had gotten parole. I got parole in April of 99. I went to the service in June of 99. And the first thing God told me, I gave you parole. He said, you wouldn't have accepted it unless you thought you got it on your terms. The first thing he told me is, I gave you parole. Had somebody said to me before I went to the parole board, if you pray to God and take a knee, I guarantee you parole, I'd have been like, no. That's not how I got in here. It's not how I'm going home. If they said, hey, man, if you just accept God, I guarantee you get parole, I'd be like, no. I don't cop out because I need a favor. And I went in there what I thought was on my own terms as my own man and made my own pitch. The first thing he revealed to me when I got saved was, I gave you parole. Even though you were stubborn in who you were, I did that for you. And I saw it and I heard it. And I should have went home in April. And I was stuck being held by the facility. And it was probably mid-August. I'm still there. And I'm fighting to get my release. They're blocking my release. It's just a lot of stuff. And I was sitting in my cell one day. I said, God, I hate this place. But if this is where you want me to serve, I'll serve. And I kept helping people in jail. Instead of complaining, I just kept helping people. And he left me there for like another 4 months. And he let me out in his time. I got out November 15th. And looking back, I was mad that they held me for 8 months. But looking back, had I been released in April, I'd have went home. It'd have been nice weather. And I'd have been out in the street and wanting to be seen. And it was summertime coming. It's my first summer in 14 years to be outside. I'd have been out that summer, hanging out, being cool, catching up on stuff I missed. And come September, when it's time to go to college, I'd have had 7 months of being in the street. I might not have gone. I got out November 15th. 2 weeks later is Thanksgiving. 3 weeks later is Christmas. I'm in college January 4th. That short window ensured that I made it to college. So had I got out in April, I'd have been happy, but I probably would have failed. That extra 8 months in prison ensured that I made it to college. So sometimes a blessing is a blessing, even though you don't seem like it.
Yep. Yep. My wife Orion says that there's always a gift. Sometimes the bow's on the bottom, though.
Looking back, it's been 23 years almost. November 15th will be 23 years. I don't even miss those 8 months because those 8 months I spent serving.
So what did you do? What were some of the things that you did in those 8 months that changed people's lives who were in jail with you?
Because I was a gang boss, I could mediate disputes between people. If you wanted to hurt or kill somebody, you needed me to sanction it. If you wanted to attack somebody, you needed someone to sanction it. If you wanted to rob and hurt somebody, you needed to be sanctioned. If it was ever up to my preview, which it was a lot of the times, I would look for nonviolent resolution versus a violent resolution. So there was that. There was people who saw me go to programs every day. Andre got his parole in April. He's here in May, June, July, August, September, October. I'm like world famous. Everybody knows me. And the fact that I'm still there and I'm not crying, I'm not complaining, I'm not screaming at anybody. I'm doing it the right way. And I'm just accepting I made this bed. That's the thing people fit. I made this bed. I put myself in prison. Nobody elected me. It wasn't a vote. I did things, notwithstanding my attorney, I did things that generated me to be sent to prison. And I did things while I was in prison to make a lot of people mad at me. So they didn't just pick on me just because. They picked on me because I picked on them first. We can say they should be bigger people, professionals, but they're humans. People saw my witness of staying in character, staying integral, still going to service, still going to service, still going to service, still being positive. And when I finally went home, I used to go to mental health counseling. I went to GED. I went to self-help groups. I went to service. The day I walked out, everything I had done prior became real. Because people are like, man, it ain't real. It ain't real. He's playing. Until I physically walked out the door, people said it wasn't real. But when I walked out the door, my counselor told me enrollment in mental health services skyrocketed. Enrollment in GED skyrocketed. Enrollment in self-help groups skyrocketed. Everything that I had done became the thing to do. Because if it worked for Andre, and he's 10 times worse than any of us, we need to go. So my presence in these places and spaces gave other people permission to do the same. Most gang bosses don't go to school or to counseling or to church. Mm-hmm. So by me going, I gave other people permission to go.
Yeah, and you were a model. You didn't just tell people, here's what to do, but you modeled the behavior that you wanted to inspire people towards. What were some of your favorite books that you read or books that were most impactful when you were in prison?
As a Man Thinketh was my number one book. As a Man Thinketh was my number one book. If I had to just pick one book on the planet Earth, I would say As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. And every time I read it, it got deeper and deeper and more insightful. There's a few books by Epictetus, Greek philosophers I was reading. It was along the lines of As a Man Thinketh, but a little bit deeper. Other books that I read that I really liked. I read all the Black novels, Soul on Ice, Soledad Brothers, Malcolm X, and I didn't think I read The Fire the Next Time. I read all the Black novels around folks. And I was reading them from the standpoint of not historically, it's just like these are positive stories of people who've been through trauma and we've come out successful. So to read these stories from people that I felt walked similar to what I walked and to come out the other side, some of them did, some of them didn't. Some of the folks died in prison, but they fought their fight. That's the thing I got. Malcolm fought his fight. The Soledad Brothers fought their fight. I'm saying Elvis Cleaver fought his fight. And I was reading books. I learned to read some books, but I didn't like the author. But I was able to separate the author from the message, which was new for me. Before, the author and the message is one. The messenger and the message is the same thing. Mm. I was able to say, no, something. I like the message, but I don't like the messenger. And that was a subtle thing. I don't want to say the book that I actually despise. I don't want to throw salt on the man, but that book prompted me to write my book. It wasn't the fun books or the books I liked, that made me pick up a pen. When I read a book about a prisoner and I detested the man, I'm like, I am nothing like this man. And how dare he write a book about us? It made me write my book. So I read all the, I'm saying, Elvis Cleavers and Smokey Robinson. I read all of them and never thought about writing my own book until I read somebody I didn't like. I said, I got to tell my story.
Who from history do you most feel inspired by or most want to model?
They call him Black Moses. You know what it is?
Is it George Washington Carver?
It's a female, Harriet Tubman.
Harriet Tubman, okay.
If I had to pick one person from history that actually I say exemplifies what I wish I could be, it'd be her. She wasn't the smartest. She listened to God. He guided her life. And when she got what she thought she was deserving of, she didn't get the people behind her. She went back at her own peril and she tried to free people. And it wasn't just a physical freedom, it was a mental freedom as well. And in her saving as many people as she could, she just kept going to another level. And the craziest thing for me is we read the story, we read the history, we see the movies. I literally learned it probably like 3 weeks ago. She died in 1913, which means she overlapped my grandfather being born. So for me, I was like, wow, Harriet Tubman and my grandfather were alive at the same time. So it makes it closer. It wasn't something like agent. Even though I never met my grandfather, he lived in the same time span that she did. He was born in 1905. She died in 1913. So it just made her history that much more real and relevant. So the fact that she just was willing to keep going back.
The book As a Man Thinketh was published in 1903, so that was around that same time as well.
James was my guy. That is literally my favorite book.
So there's another book from that era that has been transformational for me. I think you'd enjoy it. I might have mentioned it before on the podcast, but forgive me, listener, if you've heard this one before. But if you haven't picked it up and you're hearing it again, that's the cue to get this book. It's called The Game of Life and How to Play It. It was published in 1925. The author was Francis Scoville Shin. And that book is just incredible. She's like Neo from The Matrix. The advanced kind of thinking and view of reality is incredible. She's also very accessible in her writing style. Even though she's quoting Bible verses here and there, it's not overly proselytizing or overly Christian or anything like that. It's accessible for people who have differing religions or maybe even no religion. So I recommend it to everybody. It's phenomenal.
It will be ordered as soon as we finish this podcast.
You are a massive action taker.
Jeff Bezos, salute. That's my guy. He made it so easy. Cameron yelled at me one time. Cameron's new book came out.
Cameron Harold.
3PR, Cameron Harold. So I get in my car. I drive to Barnes & Noble. I get his book. I pick up my phone and I take a video. Hey, Cameron, I got your new book. Support. I sent him a video. My phone rings in 7 seconds after he got the video. He said, Andre, don't you ever go to Barnes & Noble again. Don't you ever leave your house, go buy no book. Use Amazon. You just wasted 45 minutes of your life. You could have ordered a book on Amazon in 30 seconds and you would have had the other 43 minutes to do whatever you needed to do. I'm like, yo, Cameron, I bought your book. He's like, never go to Barnes. Hey, he started me on Jeff. Me and Jeff Bezos, thank Cameron Harold for me spending my money with you. Because I never went on Amazon before Cameron Harold yelled at me.
I personally like going on drives and having time to contemplate or listen to podcasts. Some of my biggest epiphanies have come from that. I enjoy the convenience of buying from Amazon, but I also enjoy headspace, the time to reflect and communicate with God and my spiritual support team while I'm driving somewhere. Let's talk about the whole trauma, addiction cycle. Trauma, addiction, violence, and depression, and all that kind of cycle that happens, and how to break out of it.
I personally have never had a drug addiction. I've had anger addictions. I've had bad decision-making addictions. I've had quitting addictions where I quit on everything except for left me negatives. So what happens is people have unresolved trauma. Unresolved trauma becomes a continuing trauma, which needs now some kind of cure or something to become manageable. So I have this unresolved trauma from whatever it's from or whatever it's based in, and if it's not treated and it becomes long, it sustains long enough. Now it needs some kind of forced medication or self medication so I can cope with it. So now I might be smoking or drinking or overworking or whatever the thing is I do to cope with the trauma that I have. Now the coping mechanism becomes addictive. Now I'm hooked on heroin, I'm hooked on opioids, I'm hooked on weed, I'm hooked on drinking or whatever I'm hooked on to deal with the underlying trauma. Now I'm trying, people are like, oh, he's an addict. So now they're trying to fix the addict in me. But the real reason I'm an addict is because I have unresolved trauma. So now my addict becomes criminal. So now I just became a criminal who happens to be an addict. So now I'm in jail. I'm a prisoner and an addict, but nobody's talking about my trauma. So they're trying to fix my criminality and fix my substance abuse, my addiction, but without talking about my trauma. And it just spins into that whole now I'm not going to school, I'm not going to college. Now I'm out of prison, I'm uneducated, I'm a former felon, and I'm an addict. And the person who comes to fix me are looking at the surface. He's a former felon, he's an addict, and he's a prisoner. And he's uneducated. And they're gonna try to fix that until you actually find out why all this stuff exists, I'll never get better. So that's generally the people that we're dealing with. Whatever the thing that started them on that path is the thing that can take them off that path. But treating the symptoms and not the issue is always a problem. And a lot of folks who aren't addicts, who aren't former felons, who aren't the things that their kids or their loved ones become, don't know how to treat something that they don't understand. Oh, you had a great life. You shouldn't be doing that. Oh, your wife loves you. Oh, you got money. Or you got a degree. Or you got X. Or you got Y. I gave you a car. Why are you doing drugs if I gave you a car? Why you? It's not the stealing of the car. It's not even the doing of the drugs. It's not the out of control behavior. It's the unresolved trauma. And for years, trauma informed care was something that people didn't discuss. Everybody's at the bottom of the ravine trying to sew people up instead of putting up a guardrail. So it's like, oh my God, here's another broken leg. Oh my God, there's another broken leg. You're fixing the broken legs, but the guardrail is still there. I was at the Grand Canyon not long ago. It scared me beyond measure because there's no rails at the Grand Canyon. You could walk all the way to the edge and just fall in. There's nothing stopping you from falling into the Grand Canyon. And I said to myself, as I looked from 30 feet back from the edge, there's enough of the Grand Canyon I can see it from 30 feet back. Whatever I was missing in them little 28 feet, I was okay missing that. I said to myself, at least 10 people a year fall into this thing. Either they're being too nosy, they've been drinking, they're on some kind of substance, they're tired, or they misjudge it. At least 10 people a year fall into the Grand Canyon, have to. There is no rails anywhere. And it's a slope. I said, oh no. I knew enough to say, get away from the edge. Don't even go 30 feet near the edge. Most people say, let me see how close I can get to go without falling. Oops, I fell. And with trauma and addiction, people are not looking at the root cause of the person's behavior. They're looking at the outline of their behavior. Whether it's workaholism or there's 1,000 addictions. Whether it's overeating, overworking, or just drugs and alcohol, depression. Somebody's depressed for a reason. Something happened to create the depression. Depression is a response to an emotion, to a circumstance that happened in your life. Nobody just wakes up and just says, I feel like being depressed today. It's a reaction to a triggering event. So not let me help you cheer you up. No, let's find out what got you depressed. Most people want to cheer you up versus find out why you're in this state. Because it's easier to try to make you smile than to walk through the pain with you.
And you're good at that, walking through the pain with people. You help a lot of people get on the phone, and then you fly on an airplane to wherever they are, and you help save some guys or gals, son or daughter, from self-destructing, from going down a terrible path that they won't be able to recover from. And you have this role with Genius Recovery where you help that nonprofit that is helping people with addiction and with trauma to get out of that cycle so that they can lead a happy, productive life. Can you give us an example Feel free to anonymize it, of course, so that you're not sharing any confidential information. But can you give an example of a success story of somebody that you helped save them from the brink?
First, Joe Polish, who's my little brother now, when we first connected, it was based on the fact of helping people. When we met, he's like, it's like you meet somebody with your name. If I meet anybody named Andre, we're instantly best friends just because we got the same name. If you meet someone with the same birthday, you're instantly best friends. If you're out of town, you meet somebody from your hometown, you instantly got a conversation. So when me and Joe met, we had the same purpose in life, to help people escape addiction and escape trauma. So we met, we instantly became best friends. And Joe gets probably 10,000 calls a day for 10,000 different reasons, a lot of which is addiction based and suffering and depression, regardless of somebody's wealthy or not wealthy. It's just his friends. I became his arms and legs to actually show up places and actually help people in real time. He can provide a lot of services. I can go, but he has a schedule. So my schedule is a lot more flexible. So when he can't go, I can. And when he doesn't have time for the phone, I do. And if it's something that's beyond his scope, like prison, then I can step in. So we've been in this tandem for like the last 4.5 years of actually how can we help people? How can we design and create things that makes people's lives better? Because his saying is you can't punish trauma out of somebody. You can't mistreat somebody into being better. So we have the same philosophies. We just come from different worlds, but we came from different worlds with the same heart. So when we got together, our hearts just lined up and said, hey, let's go. We're the odd couple for real, for real. That's my little brother. And I tell people, I've been home for 23 years. I've been the most behaved guy you can imagine, but don't mess with my little brother because it wouldn't be a good day for you. I tell people, you don't want to see me angry. Don't make me go Hulk on you. You don't want to see me angry. But helping people. We've gotten calls where members who just started drinking and they got stuck on that drinking binge. And they would call and say, hey, Dre, people I just meet with at the meetings, this casual conversation, we might go to lunch or dinner. Hey, Dre, man, I'm stuck. And I'd fly to their city and go sit with them and stay at their house and just stay with them. The key to helping people transition out of trauma is listening and being present. It's not the great idea. It's not the wonderful speech. It's being present, it's being attentive, it's being ready and helping them get ready. So, I mean, I've gone to members' houses and sat with them. I've had people call me about their kids. Hey, Andre, my kid is drinking too much. They're doing crazy drugs and I can't stop them. I don't understand it because I didn't do them. Then I'd get on a plane, fly, and go help them. We had one girl who had a conference, and the mom was there. The mom says the daughter got drunk, got high, went out on the highway, and flipped the car upside down as fast as she could to try to kill herself. She's at the conference. She's like, what do I do? She gives me her information. I get on the plane. I go to Helena, Montana. I've never been to Montana before. But I flew to Helena, Montana like a week later, and I met with the girl, teenager. And bullied at school, mistreated, didn't want to. I get the bully at school part. And I went and sat with her and I spent time with her. And within 48 hours, she was on her track back to school, super happy about life. Couldn't be a better day. We actually, when they met me at the airport, they took us to the Helena. There's like a lot of restaurants. So we went to this gas station gas station burger spot. We go in, it's a Friday night or whatever it was, and we sit at our table. The whole place is full. And her high school, where she used to go, was in there. All the kids from high school, this is where they go. So what I did was I paid for all the football team's food. I told the waitress to come over. I said, give me their bills. And all the kids who played on the football team, I paid their food. Then when they went to pay, they said, no, he paid for you. Now, mind you, I'm the only black guy in Montana. So I kind of stand out. So it's like there's like a whole bunch of us. It's like when I walk in, they're like, where'd he come from? So they all came over to the table as they were leaving to thank me. I said, oh no, she paid for it. It was her idea. And all the kids thanked her as they walked out. Wouldn't you know, those are the people that were bullying her at school? The same people who had to stop and say thank you were the same people that we bought dinner for. And they had to acknowledge her in the positive and say, okay, not only did they acknowledge her in the positive, which was reassuring for her, They now say she has somebody to back her up. Nobody's really scared of your parents because they don't know them. Everybody's parents are like out of the picture. They're like zero sum total. Now there's 6'2" black guy with a hoodie on sitting in Montana, and he's with her. Well, what does this mean? And he's like, okay, well, who's this guy and why is he with her? Then it makes you pause before you mess with her again. I'm not worried about you calling your mom, but you calling that guy is different. I might have been the first black guy they saw in their lifetime.
So
Not in a good
how is the girl doing now?
Oh, we went out the next day and we went shopping. I said, we're going shopping. We're going school shopping. So I took her shopping and bought her a whole bunch of clothes. We're shopping. Girls love to shop. And that's one of my habits. I shop. I don't drink or smoke. I shop. So we went shopping, bought all these clothes. I said, you got to go to school now? She said, why? I said, you got school clothes. What else you going to wear? So by the end of the second day, she was excited. She was on fire, and she's back in school. She finished high school, and now she's doing fabulous. There was no one thing said. It was being present. It was having the mindset to listen and just feed the right people. I fed the right people. I could have just talked to her and just ignored the room full. Something told me the voice, pay their bill. I paid their bill.
That's the voice of intuition. That's the voice of intuition.
It was exact people who used to torture her in school.
Yeah. Now, one last question here. I'm going to throw you a curveball. Have you ever thought that maybe your life was planned out for you by you and God, and you just didn't remember it? Like all the different people that you were going to meet and have an impact on their lives negatively or positively, and vice versa. Like that bad lawyer. It was all prearranged and all set up so that you could step into the person that you truly are. What are your thoughts about that?
I believe every life has been scripted prior to it happening. Mm-hmm. Because when I read the Bible, Jesus' life was clearly scripted before he got it. He knew what was happening before it happened. He understood the purpose. He understood the beginning, the middle, the end. He understood the whole thing, which meaning he had sat with God at some point and they had a discussion about exactly what he was supposed to do, how his life was going to go from beginning to end. That's clearly stated in the Bible that his life and his steps were preset. And he knew the steps. It wasn't like he was trying to figure it out. He knew the steps to the point where he told Judas, do what you're supposed to do because I got someplace I got to be. I need you to do your part, Judas. He says, well, no, Judas, do your part. And he put the soldier's ear back on. Do your part, Judas. Because without you doing your part, my bad lawyer, I can't do my part, which is be crucified and go on and rise up. So you need the bad lawyer. You need the Judas. You need the different people who have been scripted into your life to play their role so you can get to your end goal and your purpose of being here. So if Jesus' life was scripted and they say that we are in the image of God, then every last life on this planet is scripted. Because that's the way, if he did it for his first son, why would he not do it for the rest of his kids?
You know, there's a book I love called The Alchemist, and it's written by Paulo Coelho. And in that book, I learned about the Arabic word maktub, which means it is written. Maktub is in the Quran, and it's a universal truth. It's not just, my understanding of it is that it's a universal truth that everything is already written. So, I'm going to share in the show notes for this episode an article, and I'll share this with you, Andre. It's called Maktub, a book and a word that changed my life. It's an article written by Kenny Soto. It gives a good explanation of that concept. And also I encourage anyone listening to either read or listen to the audiobook of The Alchemist. And I just found it incredible. It's just a great, great book. And also another thing too, Andre, if you feel called to order that book from Amazon or to listen to the audiobook, which by the way is narrated by Jeremy Irons, the actor. Fantastic narration.
Gotcha.
I listened to the audiobook. I didn't read the book. The other thing I'd recommend for you, Andre, is the episode of this podcast where I interviewed Vasundhara Gupta, and we spoke about soul contracts. I think that's going to be an enlightening episode for you. So if you got the time to either listen or read the transcript of that episode, I think that there's some treasure in there for you, Andre. And
Yeah.
I I think very highly of you. Grateful to have you in my life. I love you like a brother. You're an inspiration to many, and you're out there doing the work. You don't just preach the ideas; you model them for many people, and it's amazing. It's amazing what you do.
I'm going back to jail tonight. We had a huge meeting today. We had a break. Today was a breakthrough day, so it was probably your energy. That's why I was late to this. We had a breakthrough today. We have all the gangs in the jail who are agreeing to a truce of no stabbing each other, which is phenomenal. Going from 1 or 2 stabbings a day to now all the guys saying no more stabbings. That to me means that whoever's son or daughter walks in there tomorrow is not going to be stabbed. Whoever's son or daughter walks in the mall is not going to be raped. Whoever's son or daughter walks in the mall is not going to be jumped by a gang, 10 guys, and beaten just for fun. We're changing that dynamic. And it's the people who are the bad people who are now agreeing to do the good things. Yeah. And so, I mean, we had such a great day. It's 6:00 my time. I'm going back tonight because I don't want that energy to fade. Because I had to leave early. I left not early, but I left quickly to come here so I can do this. I can still go back. The jail's still there. So not only can your people send content in whatever format, if they ever want to come to jail in person and witness and pray or just talk to a mentor or just see what it's really like. You want to see lives change, you want to see lives that need speaking into, they can reach out. All they need to say, hey, Dre, you're in Atlanta. When can I come? And it's almost any time. All they need is a driver's license or a state ID from wherever they're from. They come on down and come to jail and change their life. And oftentimes I tell folks, it's not what you say, it's that you showed up.
Thank you, Andre. This was a great episode. Really glad you were here for this, and thank you for being so vulnerable and open about your history and how you've been able to turn lemons into lemonade and anger into love.
With the help and the guidance of Lord our God, anything's possible.
Thank you, Andre, and thank you, listener. Go out there and spread your love with the world, and we'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.